Okay, hello and welcome to the video. And once again, my name is Wade Smith. In this video, I'm just going to explain the belt rankings not as I understand them as I know them to be in Isshinryu karate and Japanese jiu-jitsu, uh, as my sensei and his sensei and most other schools ranked, because all of the schools I attended use this exact same ranking system. All right, you start at white belt, which is 10th Q, and then you go yellow, orange, blue, light green, dark green, purple, first brown, second brown, third brown, first degree black belt, and so forth from there. All right, so there are 10 Q ranks and there's 10 Dan ranks in Isshinryu karate. And Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is taught alongside Isshinryu karate because it ties into the Shorin-ryu branch of Isshinryu karate. Shorin-ryu is a grappling style, and Goju-ryu is a striking style with some grappling. And the two styles were combined into Isshinryu, and so naturally they also want to teach all Japanese Jiu-Jitsu along with it. So normally you only learn striking at white belt. You learn all your basic strikes and a few combinations at white belt, and it's a 90-day white belt to yellow belt program. It's 90 dojo hours to get your yellow belt, and 90 dojo hours per belt ranking up to light green belt, and then it's around 120 dojo hours for light green belt to dark green belt and dark green belt to purple belt. And then it's about a year from purple belt to each brown belt level, a year per belt for each brown belt level. All right. In the Gracie United school that I attended, look, I don't understand why a 19-year-old was wearing a yellow belt, because I asked her age and she said she was 19 years old whenever that happened. Because I did ask, because the girl was pretty small, but she's a woman. She's a grown-ass woman and can vote. So I don't know why she was wearing a Gracie yellow belt, other than maybe it was left over from when she was a kid and hadn't been promoted again yet. I don't have an explanation for that, other than the fact that she was an adult. So the people accuse me of tapping out a child and bragging about it, and that's not the damn point. If I had been paired with a child, I would have complained. All right, so that's silly. But and I was not mentioning that to brag. I was actually mentioning that it's unfair to both the man and the woman to pair a man with a woman for grappling. Was my point. Because neither of them is going to learn anything. The man is going to win, and neither of them is going to learn anything. All right. In Gracie United, as I understood the belt rankings, it was white, gray, yellow, green, blue, purple, brown, and then black belt. That's how I understood the belt rankings in Gracie United. It's right down the road. I can go ask the dude, I guess, but he lives in Hammond. He works in Hammond. I don't know where he lives, but his dojo or his gym is in Hammond. They don't call it a dojo in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, by the way. They just call it a gym. But I have a habit from being in the karate and Japanese Jiu-Jitsu class of calling all of them dojos. But whatever. Anyway, I studied Isshinryu karate and Japanese Jiu-Jitsu on two different occasions. First for a year and a half whenever I was 12 years old. And then I took about a 2.5 to 3 year break. And then whenever I was 16, I rejoined a different instructor who was much better, especially at the jiu-jitsu. And I studied under him for about 4.5 years, full time, 15 hours a week in the gym, not counting what I was doing at home. Because I was basically training like a pro fighter back then, whenever I was 16 to 20 years old. Matter of fact, I beat a pro fighter at boxing by boxing rules during that time. And then by the time I was 20 years old, I quit for personal reasons because it was taking over my entire life and I needed to focus on college. But in reality, I should have stuck with the karate and Japanese jiu-jitsu and quit college, I think, because I was so good at that it didn't make sense to quit it. And I got told that by some people, but other people, and especially my family, was urging me to quit karate and focus on college. And I'm not blaming one side or the other. I'm responsible for my own decisions. but I would have been better served if I had quit college and studied karate. Because back then I was 185 pounds and I could cut below 185 if I wanted to, but I would have to stop eating any sweets whatsoever at the time because I was doing an hour of cardio every day, and so I could eat anything I wanted to and maintain 185. But if I had cut out the sweets and dieted like a martial artist is supposed to do, I probably could have cut to about 175, maybe 180. So that would put me still on the low end of middleweight and not quite down to what they consider a welterweight in the UFC. But I would have been on the low end of middleweight, I think, if I had been eating properly. But by the time, and I still worked out and everything and over the next several years, but by the time I was 24 years old, I started to develop the symptoms of type 2 diabetes. And also I started to develop some other medical problems that run in the family. And it became totally disabling by 2012 to 2016, because by the time 2016 came around, I had actually already had at least one undiagnosed transdecemic attack. All right. So I'm just explaining the background of why I don't look like I train anymore. And the answer is I don't train anymore. And I generally, to win a street fight or a self-defense situation, I don't need to train because I was so good that it's muscle memory to do things right and beat the tar out of somebody. But and then you've got to be careful in a street self-defense situation that even if you do have to defend yourself with martial arts, don't overdo it, because if you beat the person to a bloody pulp, when the police show up, they're going to think you're the original attacker. So you should do the bare minimum force that it takes to get the person off of you, unless you're like outnumbered 2 or 3 to 1, in which case you escalate to instantaneous destructive force. If there's 2 or 3 people attacking you at once, you go to destructive force and take them out one at a time until they run away. But anyway, as I understood the Gracie belt rankings at Gracie United, it's white, gray, yellow, green, blue, purple, brown, black. And I was there for a year and a half, so I should have some kind of understanding of the belt ranking. But admittedly, I didn't look at the chart every day I walked in the room or something like that to memorize what the belt rankings were in there. They had a really good blue belt in there who's now been promoted to purple belt. It took him a long time to get promoted to purple belt, and he was absolutely really good as a blue belt. And he actually won a blue belt gold medal, but it was time for him to be promoted to purple belt anyway. But one reason the promotions are slow there is because the chief instructor and owner is never there. He owns like a chain of 25 of the things, and he's at each one like one day, 1 hour per month. So, the chief instructor was never there to teach me anything. And I did learn from his assistant instructors some Gracie Jiu-Jitsu moves that were not taught in the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu class. Yes. But I was tapping them out almost as much as they tapped me out. They probably tapped me out 2 times for every 1 time I tapped them out. And I was considered a brown belt by the chief instructor in the gym, because he knew that I had been taught an awful lot of locks and grappling. We did ground game in the karate class at least 3 days a month. Even though it was a karate class, we did ground game. We did standing grappling moves every day in the karate class for about 30 minutes. So, don't tell me that I don't do grappling, because I've done grappling all my life ever since I was 12 years old. Matter of fact, they start teaching you the grappling moves in the Isshinryu class when you're yellow belt, is when you're allowed to start on submissions. So, and you learn, some very basic fundamental submissions, which technically in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, they don't teach joint locks until you are a blue belt. You're actually forbidden to use joint locks in their gym until you are a blue belt. All right. But at yellow belt in Isshinryu karate class, in the submissions class, which is Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, they teach you the front wrist lock, the full wrist lock, the reverse wrist lock, double cross arm wrist lock. How to get sidearm control and pass the guard of an unskilled fighter. You're unlikely to do that against a skilled fighter, but you should know it in case of a street self-defense situation if you ever need to do it. But yeah, I admit you're unlikely to pass the standing guard of a skilled fighter anywhere near as easily as you can pass it in theory against an unskilled fighter. But you practice that anyway in case you ever need it in real life. We did single and double leg takedowns in the karate class. We did front figure four ankle lock, reverse figure four ankle lock, which is sometimes incorrectly called the half crab in WWE. And what they do is not done correctly, by the way, because they don't want to hurt one another. If you do it correctly, it hurts like hell, and the person will tap out. They're just actors, and but anyway, the disarmor, I learned that was in my first day in submissions class. We did the 3 basic wrist locks, the disarmor, the rear naked choke, the full arm bar, which I think is banned in MMA because it involves bracing your foot against the opponent's neck, which would technically be a neck crank. I've never seen them use this in MMA anyway. If it is legal, I would have to ask a judge. And then the reverse arm bar, and I think the reverse arm bar is also considered a neck crank and is banned because you can't use neck cranks. Bracing your foot, I'm pretty sure. If it's not banned, I've never seen it used. But bracing your foot against the opponent's neck is a neck crank, and you're also not allowed to attack the collarbone or clavicle, which this could dislocate their collarbone. So I'm pretty sure it's banned. Because if you brace against the collarbone, it will dislocate the collarbone. But anyway, the full arm bar is pretty devastating. You can tap it. Like, I was 12 years old and I was able to legitimately tap a grown second degree black belt. Now, at demonstration speed to make sure I was doing it right. He wanted it done so hard that it would tap him, and he allowed me to put it on to make sure I was doing it right. And I remember specifically that he tapped for real to make sure that I was doing it right, because the whole point is you got to learn to do it right. And let's see, what else did we do? I think we did 8 or 9 submissions on the very first day of submissions class, and I've known all of those ever since. And I became my second karate sensei's submissions test dummy or demonstration partner by the time I was a first degree brown belt, because he figured out that I had a high enough pain tolerance that he could actually crank a little on me without hurting me. But anyway, on average, you're going to learn about 10 to 20 submissions in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu per belt rank. And per Isshinryu karate belt rank, because they're taught together, and your rank is both your karate rank and your jiu-jitsu rank. So people saying that karate doesn't translate to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, most styles of karate, like if you were talking about Shotokan or Kyokushin, I would agree, because they don't do any grappling in Shotokan or Kyokushin karate. But my style is specifically designed to combine striking with grappling, the Isshinryu karate style that I studied. So, don't tell me that I don't know what grappling is, because that's most of what we worked on in class. Once we got through warm-up and basics, we mostly worked on grappling of one form or another in the class. So that's how Isshinryu karate is taught. You pair up and you do grappling. And yes, I realize it's a lot harder to put a submission on a black belt or second degree black belt than it is to put it on a white belt. I used to spar and beat my sensei's second degree black belts in stand up, but we were allowed to grapple. And generally in a gi, you can catch the other person's gi sleeve or their wrist whenever they throw a hook punch, because a hook punch isn't as hard to stop as a jab or a cross. A hook punch is slightly slower than a jab or cross to evolve, so you can actually catch and submit them when they throw a hook punch. And that's one way that I was able to beat one of the second degree black belts in there in sparring, even though he was smaller and faster than me. He was 155, so he was giving up 30 pounds to me. So once I got hold of him, he wasn't getting loose because I was 2 body sizes bigger than him. And the other secondary black belt was a 235 pounder, and I eventually got to where I could beat him at sparring. And he was in pretty good shape at 235. Not cut, obviously, but he was in pretty good shape. And he was a Marine, and because he did his service in the military. I think he was an 8-year veteran of the Marine Corps, and he was also an 8-year veteran at the time of the Hammond Police Department. So I never submitted him because it would be pretty dang hard to submit him. As him being a 235 pounder and me at 185. And he was probably better at submissions than me. So it would be pretty darn hard to get a submission on that. All right. I think I've debunked my detractors or whatever they are. And so because one of them was trying to guess my belt ranking based on the colors that he thought were in karate, and karate dojos don't necessarily have a standardized order of the colors of the belts, but the cues mean about the same thing in karate. But the difference is Isshinryu karate is not like other styles. It absorbs and combines other styles' best attributes. That's what the purpose of founding that new style was, is to combine the best of multiple styles. That's why it starts out with Goju-Ryu and Shorin-Ryu, but it adds Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and it adds 4 other karate styles and smaller details. And we did seminars with every branch of martial arts that my sensei could bring in. We did seminars. I went to 600 hours worth of seminars altogether, or 400 hours rather, excuse me, 400 hours worth of seminars altogether. So, not counting the 3,600 hours of training of regular gym time. So, you know, you don't have to. Well, if you know what you're talking about, you'll know just from the way I'm talking that I know what I'm talking about. If you don't know what you're talking about, you're gonna look foolish responding to me. So just know your stuff. And I'm done with the video now because I've debunked the people that were um, talking negative to me and whatnot and whatever. All right.